Smart Stain Aged Brass Finish. In this video, we're going to take this piece of aluminum and make it look like an aged piece of brass. We're going to start off with 180 grit on this orbital sander and sand it off so we have a nice tooth. Then we're going to come in with our Sculpt Nouveau metal cleaner, scrub it around with our Scotch-Brite pad, and remember to rinse and dry after that. So we're going to scrub it around for a few minutes and then rinse it off with water to neutralize the mild acids that's in our metal cleaner. We have a few other videos that go deeper into the metal cleaning process, so we're just going to stick with this right now, and we're going to go right into the Smart Stain application. That's what we're going to do with this piece of metal. So we're going to heat up the metal to about 100 degrees. It's not a requirement for the Smart Stains, but I prefer to do it that way. I find that we can move a lot faster, which is always a nice benefit, but it just seems to stick on a little bit quicker, and we can jump from one color to the next much easier. Now, I'm going to spray this out of our Harbor Freight touch-up gun, and remember to strain the Smart Stain. I didn't on this, and so now you get to see me try and clear the gun a little bit. And I end up getting it, but it will definitely make your life easier if you remember to strain it before you start filling it up the gun. And you can see it goes on nice and thin, and that's in combination of heating up the metal as well as the sprayer that we're using with a higher pressure. So we're going to build up this slight brass look, and otherwise you don't want to deflect from using what the aluminum has given you. You want to be able to use that kind of aluminum base, that shiny this is metal base, and utilize the brass Smart Stain for the color. So I try and go on a little bit thinner, and you can see now I've really got the clog cleared out, and we're going to build up that brass nicely now. Remember that you can always cut the Smart Stain with Smart Coat if you feel that the colors are a little bit too strong. Here I'm going to use fully concentrated brown, but I'm going to go on nice and thin and kind of just slowly build up that color. And I didn't feel like I needed to thin it on this one. The metal's no longer warm, it's cooled down. The brass is on there nice and dry, but I can kind of just sponge this on, and as long as I don't put too much on my rag or too much on the surface, it's really not going to show up too abundantly brown. So I sped this process up about 5 times just so you can see it. I didn't want to cut it all, but I wanted you to see essentially I'm just dabbing this, stippling it on if you will, and it just took a long time for this process. Once again, you can heat it up a little bit, but I would definitely recommend thinning down if you wanted to heat up the metal. Otherwise, it will come on a little bit more brown. It's only going on so faint because I can pull off and on with the rag at the same time, basically. It's just going on very thin based on application. So once again, if you wanted to heat this process up and move faster, definitely recommend thinning down the Smart Stain with the Smart Coat. At a certain point, I wanted to come back the next day and add a little bit more. So essentially, I had too much brown Smart Stain on it, and I ended up taking more off. So you can reach a point where you need to give it time. And I could have just given it an hour or two, but given the time of the day, I just came back the next day and it was completely fine. And so now what I'm going to do is I am going to do a kind of overcoat of the diluted down Smart Stain, and I'm going to spray this one on. And I have a great model, and it's kind of got a little bit of life to it where that aged brown is starting to come in. It's not a new brass anymore. And overall, I wanted to tone it down just a little bit more. So I'm going to take that Smart Stain brown that we were using just right here, sponging it on with the rag, and I'm going to thin it with the Smart Coat. And you can do satin or matte. I chose to go with satin, and it's not really one difference or another because the final sheen will win. So when we go in with the Smart Coat over the top, or the Clear Guard, or the Everclear, the wax, whatever you're choosing to seal this in with, that's the sheen that will win. So I'm going to go in with some diluted down Smart Stain, and I'm going to spray this on. And just like we did with the brass, make sure you do strain it, and then you can just spray it on. I'm using it out of the same gun, going nice and thin. I just want to bring a little bit more age out of that metal coat or the Smart Stains there. So this is a nice and easy way to just add a little bit more age to it. Now I have decided to seal this in with the Everclear, and it's important to note that when you go from Smart Stains, which is a water base, to the solvent base like ClearGuard or Everclear, You want to give it time. We need to make sure that it's completely dry, and that's the biggest indicator, is make sure it's completely dry. I normally wait 24 hours just to be on the safe side, but if you heat up the Smart Stain, you can cut that down. If you just make sure that it's good and dry on a colder day, it obviously goes slower. But here we're going to go over with the Everclear and just seal it in nicely. And I'm going to do a satin on this one just so we have kind of a nice little sheen to it rather than being completely flat, but that's just a personal choice. Here we have our final Smart Stain aged brass on aluminum. Smart Stain and Smart Coat are all available at sculptnouveau.com or by calling us at 760-432-8242.